Matty Loves Podcast. Matty Loves Podcast.
Welcome everyone to episode 11 of Matty Loves Podcast. I'm your host, Matt D. Simone, and with me as always is Dr. Tom Lucas here in the Matt Cave. Tom.
Matt, man, how you doing today?
I'm doing really good. We're over 10 episodes deep.
I was 11. We almost have a volume.
Yeah, that's like almost a full year of comics there. So that's really exciting. How have you been? You been doing all right?
I have been doing well, just lurking in the shadows and avenging injustice in the world. And oh wait, no, that's Batman.
Well, yeah, but we'll get to him. Speaking of avenging justice, you were in Gotham this past weekend, right?
Well, I was in New York City. We went up for the holidays. We finally had the opportunity to see Book of Mormon, which
Nice.
was an excellent show. Although I do have to say that Trey Parker has written far more offensive things than what was in that show. And although it did get won many Tonys and has been all the rage of the scene, they've definitely pushed greater boundaries than what I saw in that show. Still, there's a scene called Spooky Mormon Hell Dream, which was pretty classic South Park. He was dreaming he was in hell, and there was
Everybody was there.
Well, Hitler was there,
Sure.
and Genghis Khan,
Right.
and Jeffrey Dahmer, and Johnny Cochran. Yeah, and they simulated sex acts, and it was definitely like a South Park episode. But the rest of it, was tamer than I thought it would be. Still excellent. Those guys can really write songs, man.
Right.
Really write songs and music and all that, and that was pretty stupendous. And but we were there during the day, and we were down by Times Square and Broadway, which is decidedly not Gotham-esque.
Not anymore.
Yeah, so but yeah, it was a good time, man.
Well, cool. Glad you had a good time up in New York. I was here in Florida, so.
Yeah. No, well, I'm back here in Florida now too. So.
Well, cool. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone, here as we embark into more double digits for quite a while, it looks like. And, today's episode is going to be focused on one of mine and I'm sure one of Tom's favorite superheroes of all time. But we've already mentioned him earlier. Not going to mention him right now. We're just going to wait for a second. Because before we get to our main topic of conversation, we should, talk about a few other things real quick. It's September.
Yeah. Are you referring to the football?
I am, yes. The
American football.
That's right. NFL is officially underway, the regular season. So, of course, I'm glad I got to experience my very first heartbreak already after week one.
Me too, man.
Yeah, it's...
what happened on your end?
Well, it was Monday Night Football, the Eagles and Falcons. The Falcons jumped up about 20 points, and then the Eagles decided to start playing football and showed up and ended up coming back in one quarter and going ahead. Of course, they're not getting too deep into it. Their secondary, their defense is rather flawed, and they just couldn't stop Atlanta when they needed to, but even when they needed to, they missed a field goal with 2 minutes left and lost the game. So, it is what it is. The Eagles are 0-1 at this point in time. Hopefully they will be rebounding.
Well, the Lions too, man. The Lions, I don't know what's worse, to show up late to the game, get a lead, and then lose it, or play really dominating football for the first 3 quarters of it, and then give the other team 30 unanswered points. The story was Rivers. All they did was talk about Rivers in San Diego the whole game.
Well, don't you think, though, and this is from a production perspective, and I always see this in the Monday Night Football games. I mean, they kind of even just set it up so they won't fail. At the beginning of every game, John Gruden will be all like, "And here's my 4 grinders. These are the 4 guys that I think are going to go in and do really well. I swear one of them's going to do good because we're going to talk about them the rest of the freaking night." That to me is like, it's a cop-out, man. You want to find your stars. Don't sit here and pinpoint 4 guys and say we're gonna hone in on these guys one way or another.
Right.
Let one of the guys just kind of show up in the game, and that's who you talk about for the second half of the game,
Right.
I don't know. ESPN is ridiculous.
Especially a sport like football where there's like 100 guys dressed on the field. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Between the 2 teams.
Exactly.
And they always, they market their stars and they don't talk a whole heck of a lot about the other guys. And maybe it's just my bias or Detroit pride or whatever, but I feel like whenever I'm watching a sporting event that isn't covered by a Detroit team, they'll pretty much talk about the other team.
Yeah.
Pretty much the whole time. So the Lions opened up real nice. Abdullah or whatever his name is, the
Amir Abdullah.
Yeah,
he's gonna be good.
He was really exciting to watch. And Stafford is a solid gunslinger, but the O-line has some developing to do, and the defense. We lost Sue.
Yep.
And they have to still figure that out. Yeah. So we're 0-1 in Motown as well, and my hopes are low. But hockey season is 26 days as of this recording.
Right.
And I'm getting ready to order center ice and watch my 2 to 3 games a week.
Nice.
And I have high hopes, but we'll find out.
Yeah, I think in that aspect it's a little different than the NFL, whereas, I feel that on paper the Eagles are a better team than the Lions, but your Red Wings are way better than the Fighting Philadelphia Flyers.
Yeah, I got to really look at, the Flyers. The Flyers have had such promising rosters over the years, and when Lindros came to town, Legion of Doom, and you had Hextall back there, and I love aggressive goaltenders, so always been a big fan of his work, and plus goaltenders that can score goals. That's
can't
pretty.
Beat that.
Chris, but the thing is, Chris Osgood is actually in that category, and I've never been a huge Osgood fan.
Osgood, wasn't he one of the few goalies that wore like the full cage?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had the full like collegiate cage.
Yeah. And he never went away from that. I think he tried a mask and didn't like it. And I was never a huge Osgood fan, though. He does not have a dynamic personality, and now he does broadcast.
Oh.
And he's so boring.
He's like a robot.
Oh, yeah. He just sort of stares at the camera and he just talks, and he doesn't have any. They need like a Jeremy Roenick type or somebody.
At the end of the day, though, how many NHL guys are really have a real strong personality?
It's true, or even speak English well.
Right. I mean, most of them in any interview, if you're like, if someone's like, so you guys fought hard tonight. What'd you think? And they're usually like, well, we just got to keep chipping away. We're winning. And we're fighting, we're staying alive, and that's about it.
We got to get that puck down low, and
there's a lot of uhs.
Our offense basically needs to score more goals than their offense, and if our defense can keep their goals below our goals, we'll win.
Yeah, really great time this weekend. The fans, you got to give it up to the fans. They're so good, the fans. And, just keep chipping away, and hopefully we'll be at the Cup there in the end.
Yeah. Every hockey interview I've ever seen is completely useless.
Yeah.
And they always talk to them right when the period ended, and they're totally winded.
Right.
And
they don't want to talk.
Yeah.
They don't want to talk. Hockey players are not. They're if there's one of the major 4 sports in America, the one sport to where you're not going to really get much out of not just the players but the coaches too. It's the NHL, man. You're not watching the NHL for the post game interview to see what wild suit Patrick Kane's wearing.
They could just take like a transcription from an interview like 30 years ago and just use it for every single one and just dub it over. And then also too, I know what happens on the ice is different, but there seems to be a general code of behavior when you're on camera that you don't really talk smack about the other team. They tend to be super respectful. Now, I know on the ice, they're talking about each other's moms and their girlfriends and,
But it's the one sport that they make you line up and shake hands.
Right.
And go through the line like you're little kids. You see it in football at the end of the game. Both teams will come out on the field and some guys will say what's up to each other. You'll have your prayer circle and whatnot. But like in Major League Baseball, they don't do that. In the NBA, oh, hell no.
There's no way they could handle it there.
So many of these dudes are just straight walking off the court after a loss.
It's one of the great traditions. Hockey is a sport that has retained a lot of its traditions. I think baseball would be the other one that I would put up there.
Mm-hmm. But we got instant replay now in baseball. For me, that's totally just like, what?
Yeah. That's kind of really hard to wrap your head around that one.
Because if you're going to be selective on what you're reviewing, eventually they're going to have a year to where umps can't call an outside corner strike, and you got people flipping out saying, well, why don't they just, replay the balls and strikes? Why can't you just replay a strike 3? Once that happens, the umps might as well just get another job doing something else, and they hire robots to, control and monitor everything.
What is the rule on instant replays?
Instant replay, you can only review, I think it's home runs, and I do believe you can review plays like like a home plate or like a steal or something like that.
Okay.
You can't, or like fouls, fair fouls, stuff like that. You can't. It's pretty much everything but balls and strikes, more or less.
Okay.
But the thing is, you have these umps that they don't want to have to go to the replay booth anyway. And they're stubborn as shit, so, and it's proven already that these umps are missing calls, reviewing them, and still sticking with their original call, even though it's clear as day that they were wrong.
Yeah, my father lived for baseball. It was his religion, and he's been gone since 2010. I don't think that he would have been down with the instant replay. No. I think he would have been
any
shaking.
purist, No way. You got a guy like, hell, man, he's still kicking. You might as well ask, Yogi Berra what he thinks of, instant replay and stuff like that.
Seriously.
So, that's just bringing you up to where we are right now. We're getting pumped up with our favorite sports. As I'm spilling coffee all over myself here, we're getting up on our favorite sports that are coming up in the NFL, and then of course we have hockey and
hockey season can be up to 6 months long. So we'll definitely get our licks in with regards to talking the hockey.
The Flyers open up in Tampa Bay. I really, really want to go to that game.
You should StubHub it, dude. And I haven't investigated it, but DraftKings is all over sports this year.
Yeah, and I've noticed that.
Apparently, they're going to do a hockey thing. Hockey is available, so
apparently you can make a lot of money week to week doing this. Like make a paycheck, like on a weekend. Like
hands down, hands out, raise the roof for the NFL legalizing gambling.
Yes, NBA too. NBA is the same way.
They have legalized gambling.
It's there. You might as well. It is prevalent. It has always been prevalent. You might as well cash in the most optimal way possible. And I think that they're really scoring big. The NFL last year, got hit with just the worst year as far as players getting in trouble and Deflategate and all this other ridiculous stuff, but yet they still made more money than they did the year before, by far. So the NFL is still kicking. There's nothing you can do about that. We're just looking forward to seeing what the the rest of 2015 holds as far as sports go. But let's transition from sports into something for most people into Batman and comic books. It's non-relatable.
Well, yeah, I think you can be a sports fan and a comic fan.
Sure. I'm sure that there were NFL Super Pro fans back in the day that read comic books and they were like, oh, a football guy? I'm going to watch the NFL now. I'm sure that happened to like 3 people.
Yeah.
But it worked nonetheless, I'm sure. So anyway, yeah, so we're jumping now into just our main crux of our conversation here. This is a Batman-centric episode.
And really focused in on one particular great Batman story and then sort of working our way out.
Sure, but before we get to that one great Batman story, I need to ask you, because I'm curious, I always like to ask people about this with Batman, what was your introduction to Batman? Because I feel like it was the same one as mine, because I was part of that last generation that I think got that first look at Batman.
My introduction to Batman, and I'm going to pull all the way back as far as I can, is it has to be the TV show.
Okay, good. I was about to say, for me, it was Batman, the 66 through 68 television show. And I feel that I was a part of that last generation that got to watch Batman 66 in syndication every day, twice a day, to where... That was a little bit before the animated series, because once that came on, then that became a lot of kids' first experience with Batman, was the Fox cartoon.
There's 2 superheroes who come on my scene at about the same time. That's Batman and Spider-Man. And really, you couldn't be any more different. I was born in 1969. I probably, started like being aware and choosing to watch the show, I'm going to say when I was like 5. Mm-hmm. I remember the apartment my mother and I had, and the reason why is I had a lot of MEEGO dolls, those 10-inch, 12-inch cloth.
They had the cloth outfits.
The cloth outfits. I had Batman. I had a Bat Cave, which was basically
paper, cardboard.
Laminated cardboard, and you would snap it together. Mm-hmm. I had a Batmobile. I know that my Batman doll, the mask came off, which was rare. And so there was the show, there were the Batman dolls or toys, and then also I'd mentioned inheriting my uncle's box of Silver Age books from my uncles, but also I inherited a Batman lunchbox. And I've seen this online. It's worth $1 bazillion now.
It's like the metal kind with...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was metal, and it was like, I guess, embossed. Is, if you ran your hand over it, the characters...
Right, yeah.
The scene where,
I had a Rambo lunchbox just like that. Yeah.
Embossed or bas relief or whatever you want to call it. That was the illustrations on it, or somewhere between... the comic book and the show, and so those three things basically put Batman in my life in a significant way. And when I was a kid and I watched the show, I didn't watch it for camp.
Well, we didn't know it was camp.
Right, yeah.
And that was the whole thing, when I would watch it, like with Dad, he would sit there and be giggling and everything, and I'm like, I'm thinking this is like serious shit going on here, man. It was the fighting, I thought was legit action. I didn't realize what they were trying to do with the show until I got older, but then once I went back and watched it, the show was pure genius, man. It was a fantastic way to introduce the world to a superhero and not make it like a super serious show, It was made to be ridiculous.
Right.
Especially once the movie came around.
Well, it's, the show is like the swinging 60s.
Oh, yeah, the Bat-Tusi.
Laughing and, and all that stuff. And certainly, in the 60s, comic books were not considered adult reading material at all.
Right.
Even though adults created them.
Sure.
So there certainly wasn't going to be a show that was dramatic, although... Isn't there like a Batman serial or something, like the old black and white movies or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know if they made like a I have to do research here. I don't think they made a serial. I think they just did like one film in like the 40s or something like that.
Okay.
That wasn't really that long. It was either like made for TV or something, but it was definitely before Adventures of Superman, the George Reeves show or whatever. So, yeah, Batman 66. I figured that was probably your introduction to the character at length. Just like me, but when you think back of Batman 66, like all that stuff, what is your fondest memory? What was your favorite part of the old television show?
Oh, wow. Tell me yours so I can see what you're working towards with this question.
I have 3.
Okay.
Okay, and they were all villains. Because for me, I dug the villains more than I dug Adam West and Burt Ward.
Yeah, sure.
But Frank Gorshin, man.
Okay.
I mean, like, that Riddler, at the end of the day, that's not how the Riddler, acts. That's not Edward Nygma.
Right.
That is a campy version of the Riddler who was pretty much the Joker, kind of. But Frank Gorshin's delivery of everything was phenomenal. When I was a kid and I was acting like a villain, like in my room, and I was like, just playing with, like, I would always be the bad guy to my action figures. They were always the good guy, and I was like the big monster coming in to take them all out.
Nice.
But when I do it, I would like my cadence when I talk to him would be just like Frank Gorshin. So I would have like a Superman or a Batman over here and they were trying to get to the Batmobile, and I'd be like, oh, you think you're so smart, Batman, but you can't get there. You remember how everything he put beats in between every word.
Yes.
I mean, it'd be like if Frank Gorshin was like the president of the United States, and he was sitting there talking to like one of his cabinet members, and they'd be like, "Oh, what'd you do today, Mr. President?" He'd be like, "I just passed my first bill." I don't
think we're that far away from it based on what I'm seeing in the election circuit either.
Yeah, but anyway, so Frank Gorshin for me, man. I mean, when I read the Riddler in the comic books, I hear his voice, and he was my favorite villain on the show. If a Riddler episode was on, I was there until what's his name took over the role, the guy from Addams Family. Don Atkins, the guy who played the main character in the old Addams Family TV show. He came on and was like Riddler for maybe like 1 or 2.
Was he really?
Episodes, and it wasn't good at all.
Those aren't ringing a bell at all. So Riddler,
and then Julie Newmar, Catwoman.
Well, okay, I would put that on my list as well. Yeah,
I mean, whoa.
Swinging 60s,
yeah,
baby.
Man. Holy smokes. Like, God, Batman had it all, man.
Yeah.
And so, I was digging Julie Newmar just in the sexiness sense. But then also the most underutilized villain on that TV show is Falseface. Falseface never got any play in the comics to my knowledge, and should, because he is an awesome villain.
You know what? I am not even remembering this.
Master of Disguise, Falseface. Whenever they said, when they were showing the credits at the beginning of the show, and they said Falseface played by ? Yeah, so you didn't know who Falseface was, and he's a Master of Disguise. So he'd be dressed as all these different characters, but when he'd reveal himself, they'd turn him around, and he'd just have that that plastic mask on over his face. It was clear, and it was a smiley face. Yeah. You could see his lips moving, but it was kind of scary looking in a little bit.
Oh no, it's totally scary looking.
But Falseface, and I don't know, maybe Falseface was they used Falseface instead of using Two-Face because they thought Two-Face was more grotesque. But Falseface was a freak show.
Yeah. I know all these came out on DVD.
Yeah, I think
recently.
Last year or something.
Yeah, so I think I might need to investigate.
Yeah, so Falseface, I mean, I didn't know if you remember Falseface or not, but he was, and he had the mask on, so it was he talked like this. Like they never like imposed they dubbed his voice over, like it was straight up all just like his mouth was covered and everything. So, but I just thought he was such a cool villain. He could beat anybody,
right?
He could beat anybody in this room, So, and I'm just I think Master of Disguise, that's perfect against a guy like Batman, So,
well, my strongest memory. So I'm gonna put this up, I guess, in my little highlight reel or whatever. Okay. It actually comes from the full-length feature that they did.
Okay.
And at the very end of the feature, when they rehydrate all the members of the UN, because they had been turned into powder, and they set up all the little beakers and the little drip tubes or whatever. And people are being rehydrated and reappearing.
Just instantly,
Batman says to Robin, let's get out our bat ropes and inconspicuously rappel down the side of this building. And I remember inconspicuously predominantly in that line of dialogue. That also features, of course, the bat shark repellent.
Oh, yeah.
Which, of course he had.
Right.
And...
Yeah.
And that's of course where they really played around with how heavily motifed Batman is. Nothing is just a thing that he owns.
Right.
Everything has a bat on it.
Bat computer.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
And it really is quite ridiculous, really. For a guy who, at one level, relies on the shadows and stealth to get the job done. When he travels around Gotham, like, who doesn't know? I bet, like, if Batman were in the real world today, there'd be a Bat app where if you're a Gothamite,
you could find Batman. Where is he in the city?
If you see Batman, you post it.
Right,
and it feeds to Google Maps.
Right, yeah. He never did anything at night on the TV show. Everything happened during the daytime. It was all daytime shit.
Right. I mean, but, the Batmobile going down the street, like, who doesn't notice that? The Batwing. Like, you'd think he would actually be more inconspicuous.
Right, well, they had that slow-ass Batcopter.
Oh,
remember? How is this going to get you anywhere? I mean, obviously, they didn't have a budget for a bat plane or knew how to, shoot
it's like one of those little bubble copters from the 60s, too, that's just that glass front, and they just, like, slapped a red and
they
black
got the headphones on and the mic, like, come on, you guys need this shit, man. So, and then, like, it really, for me, didn't dawn on me that they were doing shit at nighttime until the movie, when, Batman's hunting down Miss Kitka.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know that's Catwoman,
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that they really did point out a lot of comic book tropes and the ridiculousness of them.
Sure.
And when we get to, like, talking about our main event here, but we've talked about, other revisionist works like, Alan Moore and Watchmen and things like that, where, it's often said, here's a realistic approach to the tropes of the superhero genre and how silly they really are and how they would really play out in real life.
Right.
The Batman show made fun of all that stuff, and it was in the 60s, man. Yeah. It's nothing new to pull the superhero genre apart because most of it requires you to buy in on a lot of silly stuff.
Yeah, right.
It's fun, don't get me wrong. This show is built on our love for comics, and if you love comics, you to an extent, that's got to be about loving superheroes. And,
right, yeah.
But a lot of the things that make up the reality of the superhero world are pretty silly.
Yeah.
But you just got to say, hey,
just go with it, man.
I'm going with it.
Right. Exactly.
And if you do, you have a great time.
With any hero, you look at comic books, you look at a character like James Bond. James Bond movies, you just got to watch them and let it go, man, because it's completely ridiculous what's going on. You know, like it looks serious as shit, you know, dramatic as hell, but at the end of the day, how ridiculous.
Especially the Roger Moore
for sure
era.
Yeah.
Was
talk about camp.
Exceptionally. Yeah, campy.
Speaking of, I don't know if you knew this or not, but Warren Ellis is going to be writing a James Bond comic for like a year. He's already said he's in for a year. And I think it starts coming out either at the end of September or October, but
so it's right on.
Yeah, I'm all over that.
Has he said what kind of approach he's going to take to the character?
No, I haven't read any of the specifics on like the story or where they're going to go with it or not. But I mean, there's a lot of high hopes for the book, and I'm totally down with reading a monthly James Bond.
Have you read his Global Frequency stuff?
No.
As far as I know, there's only 2 volumes of it. Global Frequency, the idea is there's an agency.
Okay.
It's a global agency, and there's sort of emergency response specialists, but an emergency can be anything like a briefcase nuke that's gone wild to, malaria.
Right,
somewhere. Okay. It's really very open, and I don't remember the particular story arcs, but the idea is that this agency has experts in every field as agents. Okay, and depending on the situation, they call those particular people. So instead of having sort of an agent like James Bond who, is highly skilled in a lot of areas, they call in the linguist, and then they call in the anthropologist, and then they call the infectious diseases doctor.
Right.
And those 3 go out and handle the mission. So Ellis created this thing, and I don't know why there aren't more of them. I'll have to research that. Where basically different characters for every mission, right? And they have different skill sets every time. So you don't have to keep trying to shoehorn a character into a situation and get them out of when realistically they wouldn't have the stuff to do it.
Right.
And they're great books, man. It's contemporary, real-world setting. There's no superpowers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like... It sounds sort of like Batman Incorporated. Did you ever read any of that stuff?
I'm pretty sure I read some of it.
Grant Morrison. It was basically there's a Batman in every country.
Right.
And they are all working for... There's a Bat Cave in every country, or Bruce set up Bat Caves all over. There's one in Barcelona and Paris, and all this stuff. There were a couple really kick-ass characters that came out of that. Night Runner, the French Batman, totally badass.
Is he?
Yeah, he looks awesome. But they never really done much with any of those other characters that they used in those books, mainly probably because they're, it's Grant Morrison stuff, and no one else was like, all these characters were brand new, they didn't really have anything.
Just know the English version of Batman, the Knight or whatever, and
Knight
the Jester. Is it the Jester or the Bard?
Oh, no, it's the Knight and, oh my gosh. Oh, I don't want to cheat. Squire. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Knight Squire, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So, Batman Incorporated is a single trade, is it not?
Batman Incorporated started out... Okay, so this... Batman Incorporated was going on during the New 52 transition.
Okay.
So, Grant Morrison worked up to the New 52 transition. They had, I think, like 3 issues left on the series. Wait a couple months, and then they released the final 3 issues as one, trade paperback that was like $7.
Okay.
It was kind of a deal, really. Mm-hmm. And that ended the first series. And then when the New 52 started, they started Batman Incorporated back up to lead up to the death of Damian Wayne. That was what that book did. Okay. That was Damian Wayne's death and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. But yeah, what was that book by Warren Ellis again?
Global Frequency.
Okay, Global Frequency.
I have the 2 volumes of it. And I can get those.
Add that to the list of Tom's library.
I know it was supposed to be optioned for a TV show.
Sounds like Mission Impossible.
Movie. Yeah, right.
You got a select group of guys that have to, go incognito somewhere.
Right.
Instead of having to disguise themselves, they just do it, I guess.
Yeah, and the bonus is that you get different characters every time. So it's like, gives you, as a writer, it gives you infinite possibilities kind of thing.
Well, as we're sitting here podcasting it, I've got Tim Burton's Batman on mute.
Yeah,
on the
what a
big
treat,
screen.
man.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a colorful film, too. And that plays into, my introduction to Batman, not television related, was definitely all of the hype surrounding the 1989 Batman. We were talking a little bit about it before we started recording. You were saying how Warner Brothers kind of put all their eggs in the basket of Batman in 88, 89. And
yeah, Warner Brothers in 89 is a huge player. And what they did is they used every division in the company to promote this single film. And it was the first time that they had ever even tried to do that. And there was no escaping Batman that summer. Everywhere you turned, it was Batman-related stuff. And probably the highest profile that the character had up until that point. Although, most people walking down the street, you ask them who Batman is, they can tell you who Batman is. But there was just no escaping it. And I don't know how companies work today, but it was sort of a landmark case study in film promotion and marketing.
Yeah, getting to when we decided to talk about Batman, what it centered around was Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. The definitive Batman story to a lot of people. And I think Tim Burton, when he made 1989 Batman, definitely took that darkness that Dark Knight Returns brought back to Batman and kind of played off of that a little bit.
I took a peek at Dark Knight Returns Wikipedia page just because I wanted to be sure that I didn't miss anything. And Tim Burton was quoted as saying that it was Dark Knight Returns and Killing Joke were his two biggest influences going into the film. And I want to say that I read a story or heard somewhere that in order to make Tim Burton understand that he was the right guy for the film, and Tim Burton's gone on to direct things that he had no business directing, like Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know what that whole thing was supposed to be. But, it's mortgage payment, right?
Yeah,
hey,
sure.
do we need that third hot tub? Yes. Yes, we do. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that he was handed Dark Knight Returns and told by, the people that matter that, look, this is our Batman right now. Frank Miller's interpretation of the character was a huge rock that was thrown into a pool of water, and it made major ripples, and there was no escaping this interpretation of the character. It's not like some little side, Vertigo thing, I'm sure they said, hey, this is the direction that Batman is going into, and then what, a year later, the animated series?
I think 92. They definitely even Batman Returns, they scored on that movie too, even though it's not nearly as good as the first Burton Batman film. Still, Batman Returns, money wise, still raked.
Oh yeah,
and helped generate the monster that got to the animated series, and they presented that to us. From there, it snowballed more or less,
right?
But when we're going back to Burton, and this is just based on what I've read, and I don't remember where it was, but I do believe Tim Burton wasn't even on the short list of directors to direct Batman. I think they had about 3 or 4 other big time directors that didn't want any part of it.
Yeah.
And then Burton came in and was like, I'll do Batman only if Michael Keaton is Batman. And then the studio at first were like, hell no, that's Beetlejuice, dude.
Yeah.
But
Tim Burton's the guy, though, that he likes who he likes to work with, and he doesn't really want to work with other people.
I'd be the same way. I'd be the same way if I was a director.
That was the era of Burton and Keaton,
just 2 films, 3 films, more or less.
And, and it's been Johnny Depp and Helen Bonham Carter for, forever, and all that. And Burton likes certain people to be in his world, and it's more of an ensemble cast sort of thing. Whoa, what are the Tim Burton players in this time around?
Right.
You know?
Break through the glass, break through the glass, break through the glass. Dun, dun, dun. Ah, so awesome.
Did you see The Wire?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Where does he get those wonderful toys?
Right.
If any of you have seen 89 Batman, you know exactly what point in the movie we're at right now.
Did you see Birdman, the Academy
I still haven't
Award
seen
winning?
that yet.
Okay. So, you know, there's the thing that's the really big deal about Birdman is that it's only 6 shots make up the whole film.
Right.
These crazy long orchestrated tracking shots, you know. The part about his character that is supposed to be sort of reflective on the fact that he did Batman is really super minimal.
Really?
It really is. Like, I was expecting it to be a lot more important to the story.
Well, I mean,
but the
think
actual
about-
Birdman part, not so much.
Think about what Keaton did after the Batman movies. I mean, not much. You know,
Yeah.
this is his. You know, this was his biggest role, man.
I don't know if he like took a break or what, but you know, he has been steadily working, but nothing's been high profile.
Well, and I think too, you know, he got hot there for a minute based on all the response, the positive response with Birdman. But I think he really honestly thought he was going to get the Oscar. And
Yeah.
when he didn't get it,
Right.
and just seeing the disappointment,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know if that messed with him a little bit or not. We are just speculating, folks.
Well, actors are a curious psychology.
Yes.
You know, and
Yes, because they're constantly not being themselves.
yes, and their work is built on getting attention from others.
Right, and they're playing multiple roles at once, more than likely. So they've got their head inside these 3 fictitious characters that are 3 completely different people. You know,
Right.
It's got to get confusing sometimes.
Yeah.
It has to.
Yeah, and if you're gonna be authentic about it, you've got to be like a shaman, you know, on the tribe or whatever. You got to be like half in this existence and half in the next, kind of thing. And that's why actors are notoriously bad to date.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Because you
know.
don't know when they're, you know, acting.
Yes, right. And also, it's going to be about them all the time. You know.
One of the beauties about this movie, though, is like right here, like when they're getting chased by Joker's henchmen, and he's got to find somewhere for them to go, and he asks her before he like shoots the deal up in the air. He's like, "How much do you weigh?" You know, and she's like, "Oh, about 108, I think." And then when they drop down, he's like, "You weigh a lot more than 108." You know, like that's good stuff, man. And I think that's probably a little bit of maybe Michael Keaton influence in the script or whatever. I don't know, but God, it's just so good, man.
He'll always be Beetlejuice, Mr. Mom.
The Dream Team is
the Dream Team is so good.
Yeah, that's one of his more underrated.
Multiplicity is not bad.
No,
either.
But right after Batman, remember he did that movie Clean and Sober?
Yes.
That was maybe a mistake.
Yeah.
You know, he wanted to do that serious stuff, and he can play the serious role, but for that period in his career, it's probably not the best idea.
And then the I think maybe his first major film was Night Shift with Henry Winkler, which is one of the funniest.
And then Johnny Dangerously.
Johnny Dangerously.
Yeah.
It shoots through schools.
Oh, Night Shift is so good. What a great premise. You know?
Yeah.
Like, and so dark, too, at the same time.
You got Shelley Long and Henry Winkler and Michael Keaton.
Shelley Long's a prostitute, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the premise of that. Why have they not remade Night Shift in some way or another? You know?
I don't know.
It's got a very now feel to it as far as the overall story goes.
Sure, why not, right?
But anyway, yeah, so I knew we were going to end up talking about 89 Batman for a minute here.
Well, number one, it's right on this gorgeous TV right next to us.
Yeah.
And also, too, is Dark Knight Returns, which is sort of the thing that got us on the show today.
For sure.
Is an influence. And, you know, Frank Miller was at 86. You know, he had done Ronin for DC. And which is basically Samurai Jack.
Right.
If anyone's familiar with the storyline Samurai Jack, it's pretty much the same thing.
It is on my Amazon wish list right now.
Right. And So they give him, one of the flagship characters. They give him Batman, and this is Frank Miller, primetime Frank Miller. The art, there's so much attention spent on the art.
Yeah.
The composition of the pages.
That opened right to probably my favorite scene in the whole story early on when
the bat crashes through.
When he's sitting there after he shaved his mustache and he, and Alfred asks him, "Sir, you shaved your mustache?" And he's like, "Oh, I did." When he's standing in the middle of the Batcave looking at this abandoned, wasteland.
Right.
Stark naked. In the middle of the Batcave, and then Alfred walks up and he's just like, "Hey, sir, what are you doing?" And "Oh, you shaved your mustache." And he's like, "Oh shit, I shaved my mustache."
Yeah.
But the main thing, as far as the way Frank Miller views Batman and Bruce Wayne, is great because he has them, not only views them as two separate individuals, but Bruce views Batman as a separate individual.
Yes.
He refers to Batman as he. He haunts me. He keeps pulling me back in.
Yeah.
He's doing all this stuff. And I really like that because it also seems like, in a way, in the beginning of the story, it's like Bruce Wayne and Batman had like a relationship and they broke up. But
right.
It's still lingering. And I always thought that was super interesting. And then once he puts the cowl on, he doesn't turn it off. He's Batman the rest of the way.
Right,
you don't see any more Bruce Wayne.
Right.
Even if he doesn't have the cowl on, it's not Bruce Wayne. He's in full-on 70-year-old Batman mode, you know?
Well, I always thought of Bruce Wayne as the costume, and Batman as the real guy. According to the Wikipedia page, Batman is 55.
Oh, excuse me.
In Dark Knight Returns.
Okay.
Is that true?
I guess so. Shit, I don't know.
Seems kind of young for Batman to be retired at 55.
Yeah, he looks old as shit, too.
Right. But in 1986, the character was about, I think, 46 years old at that point.
It makes sense.
Right, so I guess the idea, is that the old Batman has been retired, and this is the Batman that we're going to get. And, but of course, when you say 70 years old, that I think of Batman Beyond. I think of the Bruce Wayne and Batman Beyond.
Right.
Yeah. Damn it, I can't do this anymore, so I'm going to force somebody else out there, and I'm going to tell them what to do, like, the whole time, too. I'm a big fan of the Batman Beyond show.
And now, I watched it. I'm not super familiar with everything that happens in that series, but doesn't Bruce end up like turning on him?
There's some kind of conflict at some point, or whatever,
and he becomes the villain of the story or something. Maybe I'm wrong. I think mixed up with something else.
Specific storyline.
Okay.
There's one of the things that really endeared Batman Beyond for me was there's a two-parter where he's sent to join the Justice League. And the reason why he's sent to join the Justice League is because one of their members has been murdered.
Okay.
And spoiler alert, it turns out to be Superman under like Starro's influence.
Big surprise.
Right? And we have future versions of the Green Lantern, and we have the son of Hawkman and Hawkwoman, and some other neat things. But there's a scene where Bruce brings Terry McGinnis into the Batcave, like deep in. And he says, "Okay, look, I'm sending you to Metropolis, and you're going to take this with you." And they go in an elevator a mile down beneath the Batcave to this lead-lined vault, and he hands him Kryptonite bullet, and he says, in case you gotta kill him.
Right.
And I just thought it's such a badass moment, Prepare for every contingency. I
And that's Batman, you know, and that's another. Okay, so my whole deal with Batman, when I started getting into comics and reading comics, I like Superman. I was more just turned more to Superman than Batman. Batman was gritty, darker, whatever you want to call it, gothic. But that just wasn't me growing up. You know, I
can see that.
I liked sunshine. I liked a lot of
lighthearted guy.
Right.
You're outside during the day.
I like Superman, helpful and everything. Not saying Batman isn't helpful, but Batman is helpful to an extent. Batman's only going to help you if it helps Batman.
Right.
Period. Mm-hmm. Doesn't care who you are. He's only going to help you if it helps himself in the long run.
Right.
Whereas Superman's selfless, 100%. Mm-hmm. You know, he's going to do whatever he can just because he's Superman, you know, and he understands that. And all of my friends were Batman fans. And so I would get shit all the time, you know, for being a Superman fan. Oh, Batman's way cooler, man. He's like one of us, you know. He's like a human being. He doesn't have any powers, you know.
He's a billionaire.
Right. He's a billionaire, you know?
He can make anything.
Right. And at the end of the day, you know, this is a Batman podcast, but, you know.
Hey,
sorry,
you know.
But Superman, you give him a second and he's going to take you out, you know, if that.
Right.
You know, at the end of the day. You know, Batman has always gotten one up on Superman via a foreign object. You know,
well, this is the classic Batman plot structure. I'm sure it's handed out in a one sheet to like prospective writers. Okay, Batman encounters new threat or old threat that he wasn't expecting.
Comes back.
Batman gets his ass kicked. Batman goes back to the Batcave, hits the computer, hits Bat Google, hits the books, comes back, kicks threat's ass.
Right.
End of story. That's the human part, is that Batman gets his butt beat up all the time, but you give him prep time,
it's over.
Batman's got you.
Yeah, it's over. You're right. You're absolutely right. He is, you know, if Batman was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, we'd have Super Bowl after Super Bowl.
Yeah, you would. You know, all he would need is halftime.
Right, that's it. That's it. You're exactly right. Not even halftime.
You can't let Batman get back to the cave.
Right. Don't let him get back there.
If he gets back there, he's going to figure you out.
Wait, you let Batman go? That's fine. Wait, did he get back to the cave? Like, that's probably a constant problem for most villains. Don't let him back to the cave. But going back to Dark Knight Returns, I just wanted to talk real quick about the two main villains.
Yes.
Okay, so you've got Turk, which is the leader of the mutants.
Right.
Okay, which is, at the end of the day, all he wants to do is just watch the world burn. You know?
Yeah,
like
he's pure chaos.
Right, he's pure chaos. All he's going to do is he wants to kill Gordon. He wants to kick Batman's ass himself. That's all. Once Batman shows back up, he's like, great, perfect. Now he's arrived. Now I have something that I can do besides just all this chaos. Then, you got Joker in prison, who finds out Batman's back. You know, and it's like getting called from like an ex-girlfriend. Yeah. He wants to see you. You know, he's like, darling?
Yeah.
You know?
He can't stay away.
Joker in this story is fantastic.
Yes.
He looks great, you know, just he's like smoking cigarettes in the prison, you know, and everything. And then, you know, he sees Batman and he drops everything. And he goes right back to being Joker. And I really dug that. Now, I wish that there was more Joker.
It's almost a tease.
Yeah.
It's weird.
There's more Joker in the movie.
Right. Oh, you mean the animated?
We'll get to that in a second. But but in this story, you know, I almost kind of want more Joker because Turk is such a one-sided.
Well, you know, it was kind of an odd choice in a way from Miller's perspective, and maybe this is a hindsight is 2020 thing, but you know, the other side of the Batman coin is the Joker.
Right.
It's not any of the other villains, no matter how big Two-Face is in the Batman mythology.
Joker is the Yang.
Yes. And, you know, for this book to not be about the Joker in a way is an odd choice. And I remember picking this up in 86 and not understanding why the major threat was the mutants.
Right.
Like, this is what's bringing him out of retirement? Is this a street gang? You know, and I collected it individually. I was 16 or whatever at the time.
Sure.
the covers are just iconic.
Oh my God.
You know,
the bat symbol from Dark Knight Returns is my bat symbol.
Yeah.
Like that's my favorite one.
Right on. You know, totally. So for the Joker to actually be a minor player, kind of, in this book, which is the reinvention of Batman,
more or less,
you know,
sure,
is really kind of a funny choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. But another thing that is really important to the book too is Carrie Kelly, the new Robin. I think that maybe this is, you know, I wasn't around during, you know, or with it as far as the comic book world goes. I mean, albeit I was 5-6 years old when the book came out, but you know, I think that with the death of Jason Todd having actually just happened.
Right.
You know, in the comics, and bringing Carrie along, she in the beginning, of course, is just pretty much just being kicked to the curb by Batman, but it's typical.
Yeah.
She's still hanging out, you know, even though he's like, shut up, you know, it doesn't matter. But without Carrie, Batman would not be able to take care of Turk and all the rest of the mutants.
No, she's
Superman.
She's super important.
Right, absolutely. And it's awesome too that it's a female character.
Right?
That's huge.
Yeah.
So Carrie, I like the character of Carrie Kelly a whole lot. She's very important to that. But getting to the animated feature, I consider the animated feature of The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and Part 2 in the history of film to be one of the best book-to-film transitions ever.
It's pretty astounding.
I mean, even though it's animated,
right,
you can do a lot more with the animation, but still,
right, the
translation, you know, is almost spot on, aside from the little small things that Frank Miller is just appeasing the audience with.
Such as
the whole Two-Face gimmick. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I don't think Two-Face plays as big as of a role in the animated film as he does in the story.
Right.
Because Two-Face in the actual comic, Dark Knight Returns, he's effed to the max.
Right.
Just had plastic surgery, so he's cured.
Right.
And all he can see is that ugly side of him.
Right,
you know?
right, yeah.
And Batman says the same thing to him. Bruce does. He's just like, you may have gotten your face all fixed up, but I still see the, you know, twisted son of a bitch underneath. You know?
Right.
And when he's talking to him, Frank Miller in that panel just shows how Batman and how Harvey view Harvey and whatever. So, you know, I thought that was really cool, but and I don't think that there's a lot of the doctors who are responsible for curing Harvey Dent in the animated deal, but I don't think there's as much like news coverage. And isn't Spawn reminiscent of Dark Knight Returns, the original Spawn? Think about it, okay?
Yeah, lay it on me.
Okay, so Dark Knight Returns is half news broadcasts telling you what's going on in the city.
Right.
And they segue these news broadcasts into TVs playing in rooms where a scene is going on between two characters. Okay? And they might reference the TV. I turn that stupid shit off or something like that. Right. All of the beginning of Spawn was nothing but news broadcasts of people talking about what was going on.
Salient point.
You know? And McFarlane, I mean, he did Batman Spawn with Frank Miller, you know? That has to be a major influence for Todd McFarlane there. So, you know, I mean, Dark Knight Returns, folks, if you have never read this book, you definitely are going to, if you read comic books and you've never read this, shame on you.
Well, its influence was far-reaching. Mm-hmm. It really transformed. You know, one of the things I was thinking about last night in preparation for talking to you about it is that, you know, sort of in the modern era, they seem to really go out of their way to announce reboots, announce restructuring of characters and continuities and things like that. They have these big events, you know, where they, you know, New 52 is coming to mind, and of course, what's happening with Marvel and Secret Wars and all that.
Right.
To the best of my knowledge, when Dark Knight Returns came out as a comic, it was an organic transformation of how the character was presented, meaning they just put out a really good 4-part story.
And they told you,
with
Frank,
a top-notch artist writer,
right?
And they promoted it, but they never said, "Hey, world, here's Batman now."
Right.
And he followed up with Batman Year One.
Right.
Because they're like, you know what, Frank, you got our Batman figured out.
Tell us the beginning.
Yes, let's do the origin story, and you know what? It did change the character, and it did revitalize Batman and pull him out of whatever was going on in the early 80s. And they never forced it down people's throats.
Right.
And I think that maybe, and because we have talked many times off mic about, and probably a little bit on mic, about the problems DC is having with its business.
Right. Forget the story.
And how they're managing their talent, their players, so to speak. I think there's something to be said for just putting out a really good story and letting it have its influence on the world.
For sure.
Dark Knight, here we are talking about a book that came out in 1986. It's almost 2016, and everyone in comics knows this book and knows what it did.
Yep.
And it still gets referenced in things. I was just on the Wikipedia page. Carrie Kelly showed up in what did she show up in most recently? Was it God, where is it? One of the most recent animated shows for Batman, Carrie Kelly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, was a character. They're just sort of giving it the nod, and maybe
Brave and the Bold. They get
Brave and the Bold and all that, and I think there's something to be said about and when we look at the other seminal works, like something like Watchmen, things like that. We're talking about graphic novels that are like going on 30 years old. Yeah. When Watchmen came out, nobody said it was going to be talked about for the next 30 years. No one said it's going to be on the top 100 books to read ever.
Right.
Time magazine and stuff like that. And that's the power of telling a great story and not worrying so much about the marketing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's something that maybe they need to look at that.
For sure. You make a excellent point there. We got about I'm gonna say about 5 minutes left.
Okay, what do you want to do with that?
Here, well, okay, this could be a whole other podcast. But as I was putting my notes together, one thing that has always been just a huge, just like, not smudge, but just like a billboard that I have set over both characters is the fact that, man, as far as villains go, I would love to see someone. I mean, obviously you can't do crossovers anymore like DC and Marvel, but wouldn't it have been awesome in like 1975 if they would have had a Batman villains versus Spider-Man villains crossover book?
Oh, well, two of the greatest rogues galleries.
I mean, a Batman Spider-Man crossover story. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How amazing would that be?
Right.
For one, Batman and Spider-Man fighting alone each other. I'd love to see that for 8-10 pages.
Right.
Because
they're both city boys.
They're both city boys.
They know how to use the city geography.
Right, but how's Batman going to deal with Spider-Man?
Right.
Yeah. Because you got a physical force in Superman as being the ultimate opponent. But when you got somebody that already knows you're coming before you're coming, and there's no way you can like invent something that's going to keep him from doing that unless you get a hold of the symbiote and cheat, and have your kryptonite ring be a symbiote ring or whatever. Like there's nothing you could do. So, and I always come to this when I think about Batman and I think about all the villains. I would be like, man, wouldn't it be awesome to see Spider-Man Sinister Six run up against Joker, Penguin, Riddler, Two-Face, Scarecrow. It'd just be insane Insane. I've started an essay like over a year ago about the comparisons of Spider-Man and Batman, and how, you know, that if you're reading both comics, you get the same thing out of each from different sides. You know, Spider-Man's going to be giving you the humor from him, whereas with Batman is straight on, but you get your little dry humor from Alfred, from Dick, you know, from his supporting good guy characters.
Right.
So I don't know. There's just so many comparisons as opposed to contrast when it comes to Batman and Spider-Man.
Well, I love it too, because at the beginning of this show I said that, you know, when I first became aware of superheroes at like age 4 or 5, it was Spider-Man and Batman.
Yeah.
They were my two favorites. Yep. You know? And you know, I don't know if Dark Knight Returns had been my introduction to Batman, I don't think as a kid I would have embraced it.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree.
I think it takes a different mindset for that.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know about all this grim dark stuff all the time.
Sure.
You know? For a character like Batman, it makes total sense. But when they apply it to a character and it's not right, like Spider-Man, I have yet to read this. I can't find it on a shelf anywhere. I haven't ordered it from Amazon yet, but Spider-Man Reign is supposed to be a Dark Knight Returns approach to the Spider-Man story, and it's just supposed to be a disaster. It's just supposed to be so bad, and not even good bad. And me, I kind of want to see the train wreck.
Okay.
I really do want to see what happens when you apply the wrong approach.
Right on. Well, yeah, I think that's going to do it for our discussion here on Batman. I think we covered a good amount of what we were planning on getting to. We didn't really get to the sequel, Dark Knight Strikes Again, which, you know, we were talking about earlier before we started recording. Definitely does not live up to Dark Knight Returns. It's totally different.
Yeah. It's a Justice League story.
Superman and Wonder Woman have sex in the sky, and somehow the earth shakes. That's power.
Yeah,
I guess
it's kind of an exercise in ridiculousness.
Right. Well, I say he mailed it.
Yeah.
He mailed it. That was a paycheck. And then, of course, we have the Dark Knight DK3 coming out.
That's this year, and I don't know.
Well, I'm going to read it because I have a feeling that this is going to be one of the final Frank Miller tales. No, he's not. So, you know, that we'll have to see how that goes. The creative team is Brian Azzarello and Frank Miller are penning it, and then Andy Kubert is the artist.
Stop it!
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Got Adam Kubert, who's drawing. Shit, man, what's he drawing? Is he drawing Secret Wars? No, that's Asad Ribic. Oh no, he's drawing. Adam Kubert's doing Renew Your Vows, Spider-Man, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, if there's any Secret Wars stuff for you to check out that's related to the Secret Wars characters and shit, it is definitely you'll have to give that a read.
I look forward to it.
But anyway, so yeah, you know, lots going on. Batman, he's in your world forever. Always.
We will talk more Batman in the future, no doubt.
Absolutely. So, but with that, I guess we'll be seeing you at the same Matt time, same Matt YouTube channel. But anyway, for Dr. Tom Lucas, I'm Matt DeSimone.
Bam!
And we will be seeing you again on the next episode of Matty Loves Podcast.
Matty Loves Podcast. Matty Loves Podcast.